All right, today we're going to dig into a really fascinating literary form, one that's part story and part machine, kind of like a bridge between code and poetry. We're unlocking the world of interactive fiction, and we're using Nick Montfort's amazing book, Twisty Little Passages, to guide us. So let's jump in and explore these strange text-based worlds and see what makes them tick. So let's start with the big question, the one that really gets this whole thing going. Forget about just clicking a link or picking from a menu of options. What if you could actually talk to a story, use your own words, and have it not just hear you, but actually understand and respond in a way that matters? And yeah, that's exactly the idea Montfort lays out. Interactive fiction, or IF for short, it isn't just a book you read or a game you play. He calls it a literary machine. Think about that. It's a story for sure, but it's also a simulated world, one that's actively listening to what you type and literally rebuilding itself based on your commands. Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we need to get a little more specific. We need a clear definition. What is it that actually separates interactive fiction from pretty much every other kind of story out there? This is the core loop right here. The program gives you some text, it sets the scene, you type back a command in plain English, something like examine the rusty key or go north. The program then thinks about your input and describes what happens next. It's a real conversation between you and the world it's building. Now, this is maybe the most important distinction to get. In a choose-your-own-adventure book, or any story where you click links, your choices are all laid out for you. Turn to page 42 or page 81, click A or B. But with interactive fiction, you're not choosing from a list. You're giving commands in your own words. It creates this incredible feeling that the possibilities are endless, even when they're not. So, how does this whole magic trick actually work? What's going on under the hood? Well, it all comes down to two essential parts working together perfectly. The part that understands your words and the part that's running the world simulation. Let's break those down. So first up, you've got the parser. You can think of this as the program's ear. It's the chunk of code that takes what you typed and does its absolute best to figure out what you meant. It's the interpreter in this conversation. And honestly, the quality of that parser is everything. And this example is just perfect. It shows you the massive challenge that early IF creators were dealing with. This is a real example. A player meant to type read the leaflet, but made a typo and wrote ear the leaflet. And the whole conversation just grinds to a halt. The parser is so literal, it's just completely stumped. The decades-long struggle to build a parser that could gracefully handle typos and synonyms and all our human weirdness, that was the defining quest of IF. So if the parser is the ear, then the world model, well, that's the brain. It's the simulation that's running behind all that text on the screen. And this isn't just some static background image, it's a complete little universe with its own logic and its own physics. A digital dollhouse is the perfect way to think about this. Every single object, a key, a lantern, a trapdoor, has its own properties. That key can be shiny or cold. The lantern has a state. It can be lit or unlit. So when you type light the lantern, the parser figures out your command, and the world model checks if that's even possible before changing the lantern's state. And the key thing is, the world remembers what you did. To really nail this down, let's compare it to a database. When you query a database, you're just asking for a static report. You get a snapshot of information. But in interactive fiction, your command actually changes the state of that little world. You're not just pulling up data. You are actively affecting a persistent interactive system. Okay, so we've got the mechanics, we've got the how, but what's the point? Montfort argues that we should think about interactive fiction not really as a game to be won, but as something much older, much more fundamental, a riddle to be solved. This insight is so critical. Why don't most people replay a text adventure a dozen times? Well, it's for the exact same reason you don't keep asking a riddle once everybody knows the answer. The whole joy, the entire purpose, is in that one singular moment of discovery. Once it's solved, it's done its job. So here's the bottom line. Interactive fiction forces you to actively poke at and try to understand its own little universe. You have to learn its rules, its language, its logic. And when you solve it, you don't just get points on a screen. You actually gain a new perspective. The prize isn't a high score. The prize is the understanding itself. Now, this art form didn't just appear out of thin air. Its story is really cool. It begins in the basements of universities, on these massive, room-sized mainframe computers, long before any of us had a computer in our homes.
It all kicks off in the mid-70s. A programmer and caver named Will Crowther creates Adventure, the very first IF work. This thing inspires a bunch of MIT students to build their own, even more complicated world called Zork. Well, that team went on to form Infocom, the legendary company that brought IF to the masses in the 80s. And even after Infocom's time was up, this passionate, independent scene kept the flame alive, and they're still creating amazing stuff today.
And Infocom's work was incredible and so diverse. It wasn't all just fantasy dungeon crawls. Take Starcross from 1982. This was a super demanding, hard science fiction story that asked you to solve these really complex puzzles on this mysterious alien ship. It really respected your intelligence.
And then you get a masterpiece like A Mind Forever Voyaging in 1985. This thing had almost no traditional puzzles at all. Instead, it used the IF engine to make this powerful social commentary where you could experience simulated futures of a city based on political decisions. I mean, this was the moment that proved the true literary power of the medium.
So, why does any of this matter today? I mean, we live in a world of photorealistic graphics and VR. Well, it's because the core ideas of interactive fiction offer this timeless blueprint for anyone creating any kind of interactive experience.
Seriously, whether you're designing a video game, a chatbot, or heck, even an escape room, these lessons are vital. First, build a world with consistent rules that you never break. Second, define how the user can interact and make it feel fair. Third, make sure their actions have real, tangible consequences. And maybe most importantly, design for that aha moment of discovery, that feeling of solving the riddle. And that's really the final thought to leave you with. Today, we're just overwhelmed with menus and options all the time. Interactive fiction is this powerful reminder of the beauty of limits and of that unique satisfaction that doesn't come from just picking an answer, but from having to discover the right question to ask and the exact right words to use.